Good morning, everyone, and a big welcome from CTA to our first Good to Go online session. So today's session is specifically about how to run school transport, with a particular focus on how to run your minibus safely in the current climate. So before we begin today, I'll just run through some housekeeping. My name is Emer Murphy. I'm the Support and Engagement Executive for CTA in Scotland, and I will be facilitating today's session. Leading today's session is Rachel Milne, who is the Director of North East Transport and Training, which is situated in Aberdeenshire in Scotland. So as I mentioned for today's session, if possible, to keep your microphone muted to avoid any noise pollution. If possible as well, to please keep your camera on, just so we can interact with each other. If not, that's also okay. If you would like, feel free to say hello in the chat, so saying your name and the organisation or school that you're representing. I will also be recording today's session, which will be sent out to everyone over email after the session. And as well, and lastly, in our Q&A section, if you have a question, please raise a virtual hand. The virtual hand is situated in the function bar in the middle of the screen on your far left. So we have a picture in our presentation here, just where I'm drawing my mouse over. So Rachel, when you're ready, I'll pass over to you. Enjoy, everyone.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me? I hope. Right, I have control of this screen now, she says, hopefully.
Yes, all good to go.
Yeah, oh no, yeah, I've managed to destroy it in one good go. I don't know what I'm doing now.
So just down the...
Can you put it on the big screen? I can't see it anymore.
Yeah, if you just take your hand off the mouse.
Okay.
Now.
I knew this was going to happen. I knew I'd managed to break it. Right. Right, so if I press that button, it should, there we go. Right, I've managed to do it. Okay, hello, my name's Rachel, as Emma has just said. I run a commuter transport and transport training social enterprise in the northeast of Scotland. I have done this session for coach companies and bus companies, and hopefully I've managed to condense it into something for you guys. Please ask any questions, because I'm going to shoot through it. I may not speak about everything on the slide, but that's the point. With the slide behind me, you can have a good read about it. Come on. It's not moving. Can you make it move for me, Emma?
Yeah.
Thank you. That was, we'll deal with two sessions. We'll deal with COVID stuff, and then we'll deal with the basic operations of the school minibus. I'm going to fly through that bit, but I would suggest that you come back to us for anything that you need from there. Okay, again, if you move it for me, there's one more. I've definitely broken it. There we go. Right. Most people, as you know, have heard of COVID at the moment. In fact, if you haven't, you've been in a box somewhere. From your point of view, it is about the schools. It's about the fact that children, although children get the illness to a lesser degree, they can still get it, and they can still carry it. There's no vaccine at this point. We are in this for the long haul. We are not in this for the short haul. Next screen, please. Why can't I make it? Brilliant. The important thing is that your school bus, the virus can survive on it, not for hours, not for but for days. So it's not a case of they come off the bus and the virus goes with them. It doesn't work that way. Basically, from here, 72 hours on plastic glass, your fabrics in your bus, it can stay on there till up to 48 hours, 24 to 48. The fabrics in your clothes are the same. So basically, although this thing can be killed very, very easily, common household bleach and water or disinfectant wipes, it can be killed. But if you don't wipe that down, if you don't clean it, it's going to stay there. It doesn't just go. Keep going, please, Eva. One of the things that you have to remember, we talk very highly when we're talking about community transport or school transport or any transport with children, we talk about your duty of care. The further away your relationship or between you and your client or you and your school child, the higher the duty of care. But with COVID, it isn't just about the kids at school. It isn't just about the stuff you do from work. It's what you take home. Every driver of that bus will be taking the potential germs home with them, so we're going to talk about that more. So basically, the PPE or the barrier equipment you've been given, please wear it. If you aren't given it, then we're going to talk a little bit about this, about gloves, potentially aprons, certainly masks, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And any concerns you have at all, report up to your line manager. Next one, please. It again. Stop playing with it, Rachel.
No.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, when I was looking about masks, a lot of the group that I've looked through the attendance list today, a lot of you are from England. Obviously, I'm based in Scotland. Our kids all have to wear masks in school transport at all times. For you in England, it seems to be such a variation that I just couldn't keep up on who was doing what, to be honest. So I would suggest speak to your local authority and make sure that you are doing what they're saying. Wales, it's different again, and Ireland, anybody under 13 doesn't have to wear a mask. So there are huge regional variations. If you're not sure, ask your executive from CTA or ask your local authority. Same with antibacterial gel. Up in Aberdeenshire, where they're saying academy kids should use it. Primary children, it's up to the teachers. Have that conversation, but certainly encourage it. It doesn't do them any harm to give them a quick wipe down and as they're getting in and off the bus. The important thing about loading buses is make sure the kids or whoever you're carrying are getting on from the rear to the back. What you're trying to do is reduce contact time. What you don't want is little Alfie sitting right at the front and everybody passing him again and again and again. You're wanting to reduce your contact time. So if you load them from the rear to the front and make sure they get off front to rear, and make sure they're also using the same seat coming back so that you're reducing your contact patches for that bus. Try and reduce the amount of touch points. So seats, make sure that the kids are sitting on the seat, make sure they put the bag down on the floor, not on the overhead lockers. You want to keep cleaning to a minimum, really, especially since you're not going to have a lot of time. Same with bin liners, keep bin liners on the bus. Ask them to bring off their rubbish with them. The young people are sensible nowadays. They understand COVID like the rest of us. And if you're saying to them, and we find this on the school buses, we say, please bring your rubbish with you, put it in the bin at the front. They're really good nowadays because they're fully aware of the infection controls. I always like to say, especially at this time of the day, I don't know what it's like down with you, but up in Aberdeenshire right now, it is wet and cold. October has arrived with a vengeance. And when we say keep the windows open, have a regular flow, I'm fully aware we're coming into winter. You might not be able to do that. But if we can try and have that regular flow of air, and try not to use your heating systems. But again, we're coming into winter. Nobody's daft enough to think that you're going to be able to do this all the time. It's sunny and dry in Ledbury. Great. It's freezing up here and it's dreary. Can we move on, please, Emma? Some of you, and I haven't looked through, but some of you will be working with people with disabilities, as I do and as a lot of my clients do. Obviously, you have to be person specific. Some young people, especially if they have autism or a variety of other illnesses, may not wear masks. So you have to be person specific. Each person will have the passenger safety plan. You will know what's best for them and they will know what's best for them. Have the conversation with them. The important thing here is to keep you safe though as well. So think about your PPE, think about your barrier equipment. This is where the aprons I was talking about work. Put an apron on, masks and visors, if you can, certainly gloves. Make sure your gloves are one use only, okay? In this case, if you're working with somebody one-on-one and you're tying the wheelchair down, you use your gloves and then you remove those gloves immediately because you've got other touch points within the bus. And again, use a fresh pair for every journey if you can. Yes, it's not exactly very eco-friendly, but at the moment we're talking about reducing the chances of infections and the chances of touch points. And that's what you have to remember. Imagine as you're going through a bus that you have paint all over your hands. And every time you touch something, you leave that paint. The paint is your COVID, you know, so think about it like that. But always, again, I go back to be person specific, have the conversation with the pupil and see what's best for them. Next one, Emma, please. Cleaning. Nobody likes cleaning. I hate it. Absolutely loathe it. However, at this point in time, we have to be thinking about it. Now, you on average are teachers or you're working in the school doing other things. The last thing you want to be doing is thinking about having to clean buses. But you're going to need to keep the bus clean and you're going to have to clean it through between every use of it. Now there are specific surfaces here that I've suggested that you want to concentrate on. And you have to be sensible about this. I don't expect you to have buckets of water and disinfectant through every one, but at the end of the day, it really does need a good clean. However, in between, there's nothing stopping you using disinfectant wipes. If perhaps one teacher's going out and then another one's going in later, make sure your touch points are covered, make sure these specific surfaces are done. But at the end of the day, at the end of each day, it really is going to need a decent clean, and that is a bucket of water with some bleach or some disinfectant in there, going through every surface that may or may not have been touched. There are also some solutions that might be easier, and I don't know if you guys can see this. This is the one I use. It's a misting solution. Basically, you put it in the middle of the bus, you turn it on, and it just mists, and basically it disinfects the whole area, which for me is best because I can't get to some of the touch points I may not be able to get to, so I try and cover that way. But the important point is between every use you must do some sort of cleaning, you know, which is why I'm saying to you, have bin bags, trying to keep your touch points as low as possible. Next one, please, Emma. Fantastic. Now, that was the COVID stuff. Like I say, we're going to talk briefly, very briefly, because I do want a lot of time for questions about the operational requirements for minibuses. This is really, really important. If you are operating a minibus, it's very important that you operate legally. The person who is always at the butt of the legal process is the driver. The driver is totally responsible for everything that happens on a minibus while they have charge of it. However, there's nothing stopping the DVLA, the police, the prosecution systems coming over after the organisation themselves. So it's up to the organisation and the drivers to make sure they're operating correctly. So we're going to talk about the driver licenses, the permits and training and things. Next one, Eva, please. Okay, first of all, if you are going to drive a minibus, please make sure you have the appropriate driving licence. You need anybody as old as I am, let's just be honest about it, after 1997, who got their driving licence after that, they cannot drive a minibus because they, without doing the D1 by test, because they won't have what I have, which is the D101, the D1 with the 101 requirement on it. That allows us old people to drive a minibus on grandfather rights. You can drive it under the B licence. Personally, I'm going to advise that you don't do that. There is a grey area in the law, which I don't want to really go into at the moment. We could talk about it more later. But for teachers and people like that, my suggestion is let's not do that. There's no case law. I don't want you being the case law. So please have the D1 or the D101. Next one, Emma. Section 19 permits. You would be very surprised at the amount of people that say to me, is that a real thing? Actually, it is. It's a piece of paper and a little disc that goes on the front of your minibus. It allows you to drive legally, not for hire or reward. You must have one of these to operate correctly if you're operating not for hire or reward or not on an O licence. Please have one. They're only about £11. If you're a CTA member, you can get it through the CTA. If not, there's a variety of other providers, including the Traffic Commissioner office. But as I say, you'd be very surprised at the amount of people that don't realise it's a real thing for me. Carry on, please. And the last, training. Training's the other one. Again, we have a lot of people who assume that if they're as old as me, let's go back to this, and they have the D1 with the 101, the grandfather rights, I can drive a minibus. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Please, training is vitally important. Remember, going back to that duty of care we talked about earlier, you may have up to 16 young people in your minibus. The higher the duty of care you have, obviously the more responsibility. You wouldn't expect the coach drivers to be jumping in with no training. So please don't expect a teacher who is beautifully trained to do their teaching job to be able to drive 16 people with no training. MIDAS is your CTA national qualification. I would suggest you speak to CTA on that. There are lots of MIDAS trainers around, all of who do an absolutely sterling job. But if you decide not to do MIDAS, please do some sort of driver assessment of any new driver and regular assessment throughout the year. If somebody has a prang or a bump or whatever, get them reassessed. Do that training regularly. As I say, just because somebody can drive a minibus by law doesn't mean to say they should. We've all seen people that should have driving licenses, and you think, really? So just think about that in minibuses. Nima? And the last one, maintenance. Now, the one thing I didn't put, I noticed this morning when I read this, I didn't put in here, was your walk around checks. Every time you take a minibus out, you should be doing a walk around check. You should have a list of things that you should be able to check on a minibus every time a driver takes it out. And that includes your oil, your lights, your fluids, your tires, electronic, everything works. Remember what I said, the driver is ultimately responsible for anything on the minibus while they are driving it. So if you have a light out and you're pulled over by the police, if you're not happy, the bus, a lot of times where people are not running buses regularly is that they assume that 1 year service and MOT is enough. It's not when you're when you're using a minibus, especially for schools. You're in and out all the time. Different drivers are out. 6 and 8 week checks are definitely best practice. You can get your samples of that. That you can take to your local garage, and you can get them off that link that I've said, the maintaining roadworthiness. You take it to your garage and you just say, this is what we want. They're really, your local garage is probably very, very good at doing that. If you don't do your 6 to 8 week checks and something goes wrong with the minibus, then your chances are the Traffic Commissioner's office is going to come and start digging through and start saying some very harsh things to you. So please have a think about that. Please, whatever you do, don't rely just on 1 year service and an MOT. And I'll finish by telling you a stupid story. My bus got MOT'd this week. Went in on Monday morning, passed it, no problems at all. I drove it halfway home and it broke down. I was very, very upset. I'm still very, very upset. But the point is, it passed an MOT and then broke down. These things happen. You've got to have them the vehicle serviced. I did. It just was one of those things. That's me. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That was a flying visit.
I'll stop sharing the screen now so I can see everyone. That was fantastic, Rachel. Thank you. So if anyone has a question, if they could please raise a virtual hand. Okay, so we have Simon Pearson. Simon, if you want to unmute yourself.
Good morning, thank you very much. I put the question in the chat. It was about, we use our minibus at school for a lot of very short journeys. And because our minibus can take, 17, including the driver, it means we can take classes into the local area. What would your advice be around the fact that these children are in a class bubble all day, and the cleaning aspects? Because obviously, if you're going to have to do a major clean in between that ferrying, then of course it's going to have an impact on what we can and we can't do.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's really unfortunate on that. However, yes, your class is in a class bubble, but what happens if you have, again, I'm sorry, I'm not very sure on the English systems, but if you have a class of 11-year-olds and then a class of 17-year-olds, what's the chances of them meeting and meeting during the day? Fairly low, I would suggest, which means that your cross-contamination.
Sorry, I probably didn't make myself very clear. So I've got a class of say 10-year-olds. They are going to the local woods 2 miles away. So the first 15 go. The minibus turns round, comes back to pick up the second 15, and then take them there. Now, we use our minibus a lot for that, because obviously it means the costs for transporting is minimal. And if you're doing it locally, you can actually turn around very quickly, and and the first group are perhaps just waiting for 15 minutes. But if I was going to have to put a cleaning regime in between, then that 15 minutes would suddenly turn into considerably longer. Bearing in mind that they're in a class, and therefore they'll be sat next to each other during the day anyway, I get that we'd have to do a major clean at the end of the day, but is there a real need to be cleaning in between?
Right, okay, I get you now, sorry. I just assumed that you were talking about one class of one and another class. No, if you have the same class, and as you say, they're in a class bubble all day, and you don't know, they will be interacting, doesn't matter how you connect them, then I wouldn't particularly worry about that until you've finished with that specific class. Once you've done that, then it would need to clean. And that's just my opinion, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I like your opinion. Thank you very much indeed.
I've got to admit, what you have to remember with COVID is this is an ever-changing scenario. What we say today could be totally wrong tomorrow. We're learning as we go with this disease.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. We've had another question that's kind of in a similar vein to what Rachel just answered. That was in the chat. It's, how do you respect social distancing if the minibus is full?
The only thing I can say there is, and we talked about this before this event, I have a 16-seat minibus where when I'm taking my shopping services, I can only take 3 people on it to get that social distancing. Classes and schools have been told that this social distancing, the 2-meter rule or the 1-meter rule, doesn't matter. So to an extent, that covers your school transport. But again, you have to decide on what's best for you and your organisation, I think.
Thank you, Rachel. We've had another question on the chat, which Anissa, who also works in CTA, Anissa, if you want to give a quick wave, has very kindly answered, but not everyone may have seen it. It's, do Section 19 permits expire? Rachel, do you want to take that one?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I thought Anissa had answered that. So yes, absolutely, every 5 years. You must replace them every 5 years. Or if you change the reason that you are providing transport. Because remember, the Section 19, you have to specifically say what type of membership that you're working with. So if you change anything of that, then you need to be changing your Section 19.
Thank you, Rachel. We have Anita. You've asked a question in the chat if you'd like to ask it over the call, or whichever way suits you.
That's fine. We're trying to get onto the Midas training course because we're literally just about to receive our new minibus. Unfortunately, everybody we have called aren't working at the moment around the area that we are. So is there anywhere else that you could recommend that we could get similar training, or because obviously we don't want to not be able to use the bus, you know, and wait past January to get the training?
You can get, CTA have now said that we can do online for the Midas, but that is just for the presentation. Unfortunately, you still need the driver assessment, and if it's an accessible bus, which I hope it is, then you need that side of things. So unfortunately, it's a case of maybe finding somebody who will come down for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Where are you based?
We're down in Surrey, Guildford Way.
Oh, you're miles away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not allowed to cross the border, or I'd say I could do it. But Nicola Sturgeon's keeping us all in Scotland at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Thank you anyway.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Anita. We have another question in the chat from Styles with a double S. We have section 19s for 17 and 12 seater buses. Do you need one for a 9-seater vehicle, and are they transferable, i.e. when you change a leased bus?
Yes, they're transferable, although they are, when you apply for one, you will need to give your registration number. But if it's temporary, then yes, you can transfer it at the moment. The 9-seater, yes, you do get a section 19 for a small vehicle. I've got to admit, I'm going to put both hands up here, never used them, so I can't really say much about them there. So I would pass that one right back to Emma there.
Brilliant, thank you. Has anyone got any more questions that they'd like to pop into the chat, or even raise a virtual hand or a real hand? Mel, we'll come to you.
I just wanted to say to Anita, we've got a Midas trainer at St John's School in Leatherhead. Now, I don't know for definite whether we can offer that to outside people, but I can certainly check and get back to her.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
No problem. So if you can sort of maybe message me your details, and as soon as I can talk to my operations manager, I can get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, and that's exactly the kind of thing that we like to see, and why these events are so important, to connect people to each other. So thank you very much, Mel, for your contribution. So we have a question from Andy Haynes in the chat. We have 2 9-seater minibuses. Do we need a section 19 permit for each bus?
Yes, I'm afraid you do. Yes. Purely because you can be using the 2 buses at once, and if a bus goes out without a section 19 permit, then unfortunately your insurance is invalid and you're acting illegally. You can be charged. And remember what I said, the driver is ultimately responsible, but they can come after the organisation as well. They're only £11. I know it's not going to break the bank.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And as Rachel mentioned, you can get section 19s from us if you are a member of CTA. So if you are interested or feel you need to discuss it more, do feel free to contact us. I will run through all those details and emails at the end of the session. So next we have a question from John. Or input. John, do you want to unmute yourself? No, I'll do there, John.
Right, okay, that's better. I was just saying that as section 19, as a part of the daily check sheet, we ask drivers to complete. We have seen very hot whether the tax discorder had to detach itself from the window, and the puck ended up on the floor, and
I'm not hearing this too well, Emma.
So when it,
I think it's John's reception is coming and going, unfortunately. Sorry, John.
Clear.
One of those techie things that unfortunately we're faced with at the moment, but that's okay, John. I think if you want to input your input into the chat, I'll be able to read it out to everyone, and this will be sent to everyone anyway. So that's how we'll overcome any of these tech issues.
I think one of what John was starting to say was that he checks the section 19 as part of the walk around checks, which is great. Yes, absolutely. Should definitely be done that. And you know, the fire extinguishers, the standard stuff should all be checked every day, because you never know who's going to move what while you're not, you know, you're not around. The other thing that suddenly occurred to me as we were talking just there was that drivers, going back to what I keep saying about drivers being ultimately responsible, you can and should be checking that the vehicle is insured and MOT'd. I often ask bus drivers this when we're doing this driver CPC. How do you know that you have insurance? And they look at me blankly and go, well, the boss does that. Yes, but who gets charged if you don't? You know, ask the question. Go and have a look at the insurance documents, because they're not normally carried on the vehicle anymore. Go and have a look at them in the organisation. Any boss worth their salt will say, yeah, absolutely, there you go, have a nosy at them. And it just puts your mind at rest.
Brilliant, thank you, Rachel. In regards to the walk around check for our members, we do have a template available, a check off list that we can give to you if you gain membership, and that's a really handy resource to have. We have another question come in from Sarah. And so Sarah said, should the Midas trainer have let me know about the section 19 permit?
It is actually part of the Midas suite, the presentation. So yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you, Rachel.
But I don't want to say that he could have put it out in paperwork beforehand, because the presentation is really quite bulky, and he might have been trying to remove, you know, extra slides.
Brilliant, thank you, Rachel. Has anyone got any more questions they'd like to ask as we have Rachel here?
Well, you let me off the hook easily, thank you.
I know, this is fantastic. Any more else on the chat?
Did we get John's comment?
Yes, so John just said in the chat, just saying we have the section 19 permit as part of the checks we do. We had an instance where the permit fell off the window onto the floor and had a polite note put on the window from a traffic warden.
Yeah.
So thank you, John. Lastly, has anyone got any more questions? We've Debbie come in. So Debbie, would you like to unmute yourself? Okay, Debbie, I can read it out for you. I know people can be shy when we have so many on the call. So Debbie says, does anyone have a screen to separate driver from passengers? And this is a question that has been coming up a lot in our weekly advice drop-ins. So something that I'm happy to talk about, or Rachel, if you'd like to talk a bit about it.
All I'll say is that I really thought about it a lot, but a lot of the clients I carry are very elderly, and when they're trying to talk to you, the screen was actually making more of a problem. So I just go with using the mask and very much social distancing. It is one of those things that I'm constantly reevaluating and thinking, is it a good idea? And I know many of my clients use them. And swear by them, because then the driver isn't having to wear the mask all the time, you know. So, but that's as much as I really know on that one.
Thank you, Rachel. We have guidance of how to operate your minibus safely in the current climate on our website. which is available to everyone and which we can send out to you in the email, and we send it out today. We do have a recommendation in there, if possible, to input a screen. Due to the conversation we've had over the last few weeks, I've got a lot of recommendations from members in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland of where to source these screens affordably. If anyone would like that information, feel free to contact our advice line, which myself and the other support and engagement executives facilitate. So we'd be happy to pass that information on to everyone. And so we've another question here, or input from John. So John said, I think the issue with using water and bleach and anything used on seat fabrics, it is too wet, so we use a fogging machine, which does the job of the whole bus in 25 seconds. So John, if possible, would you be happy to unmute yourself and talk a bit about your experience of using a fogging machine on the bus?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to come through clearer. I'm getting a signal up on my system saying the internet is unstable. I'll try. Yeah, we use a fogging machine. I also drive for a private school in the morning, so my route goes out at about 6:30. We were finding to complete a full clean was taking anything up to 3/4 of an hour. And that wasn't what you want to be doing before you went out at 6:30. So we looked at other things. The water solution also causes other problems in the bus, because anything that's got iron in it will rust, and longer term that's going to cause an issue. The fabric's getting too wet, with a lot of people spraying with all sorts of aerosols, most of which were antibacterial, and we're talking about a virus, and the two are completely different and have to be treated. So we looked into it, and we got a fogging machine which enables us to go through the bus in about 25 seconds, and it disinfects the whole bus, and we're doing it once a day. We normally do it at the end of the day, and then it leaves it all to settle and any excess vapor or anything to clear overnight. And talking to the manufacturer, doing it once a day is more than enough, were their words. We obviously do the touch points more frequently, and at the moment in Aldi they have antibacterial and antiviral wipes in one for 69p a packet, so we're not exactly breaking the bank on that. I would suggest probably the drivers wear gloves, because if they're continually doing that, you don't want too much exposures to fairly harsh chemicals. The fogging machine, as I say, will well, how long does it last? How long's a bit of string? I anticipate, and we've got 3 minibuses that we have to keep clean. We should see probably a good 9 months worth out of it, and it's an investment of around about £333 with your discount if you're a CTA member. So it's worth looking at, and to save it. Otherwise, I've got to pay driver time, £10 an hour or so, plus other costs, etc. So to me, it seemed a small investment, and there is quite a lot of funding available that will pay towards this, as it's something to do with working against COVID. So you could explore that as well. So that's my experience. And it's worthwhile. We use it here. We've got our own one here in community transport, and it's a lifesaver. The drivers just pop past the office. They've all got keys, so if we're closed, they can pop in, pick up the cylinder. The only other thing you do need to do is, wherever you're storing it, you do need to put a symbol on the window so that the fire brigade know you've got a pressurized vessel, non-flammable. So I would highly recommend it.
Thank you very much, John. So next we'll come to Sam. Sam, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. It's just a question for John. What's the name of that machine? Because I've been looking into fogging machines, and for the same reasons that everybody else, of it making it wet and everything else. but that seems quite an efficient way of doing it. I mean, I run possibly somewhere around 12 routes every day if they were all running on time, which means 3 buses constantly needing cleaning. If that only takes about 25 minutes, that's a lot quicker than anything I've seen. So if you could let me know the make and number of that machine, that would be fantastic.
Okay, as long as I'm not going to get shot.
Well,
it's the Zaptizer, which is ZAPPTIZER, I think it is. I'll find it when I've stopped answering the question, and I'll put a link up on the chat. And as I say, if you do identify yourself as a CTA member,
I am.
It's not a member discount. It's otherwise it implies that they've totally endorsed it, which is not the case. But the company has agreed to offer a 10% discount. So
Fabulous.
It's 120 for the lance and the spray gun bit, and it's 250 for the cylinder, complete with all the fluid obviously pressurized in it. It does save you going to the gym because it's heavier than lifting dumbbells. So there is a trolley available, but that adds to the cost as well. So, but then you take 10% off. So it's normally if you just buy the 2 bits, it's 370 less 37, so 333.
Excellent. And how long does the cylinder last?
Well,
what's
we work on it taking about 25 seconds to go through a bus. Normally we go in through the side door. We have the back doors just slightly open to encourage a little bit of airflow. We just walk slowly backwards, the bus sweeping the lance from side to side, and then just turn behind the 2 front seats and the driver's seat and just put a small amount over that area. If you're concerned about air conditioning units, if you find out where the vehicle intake is, you can just put a small amount up there and it will go through the air conditioning system as well.
Okay, that sounds much more efficient than anything I've seen and takes a lot less time. What's the cost of the renewables for it, the fogging liquid, etc.?
Right. They looked at the return cycle, and the cost of getting it back. There is only one transport company in the country that carries pressurized cylinders, a courier company. So the cost of recycling, going back up and refilling, and because it's been out, it would have to be repressure tested. It actually becomes too cost prohibitive. So the whole cylinder is recyclable through your normal recycling route, and thus it's another £250 when you get it. They also do a smaller cylinder, but they're only for sale by a pallet load. But they're ideal if you've got a large fleet of minibuses. They also do now wipes that are treated, but they are a lot more expensive than Aldi. And they also do aerosol cans, which you have to buy. I think it's a tray of either 12 or 24. But that's another thing. So we tend to get those in for our ring and ride drivers who drive their own cars. So if they want to do it, then they can utilize that. And there's much less chance of damaging any fabrics with it than a lot of these wipes. We're finding people who have been using wipes and anti-bac sprays are now complaining that their seat fabric is changing colour.
Thank you very much for that, John. Just before we wrap up today, I'm wondering, has anyone got any more questions specifically for school transport and transporting children, or any concerns they have or questions they would like to ask the group? So we have 2 participants raising their hands. Perfect. So Dean, we'll come to you when you're ready.
Morning, everybody. Just on the topic of atomizers, this is what our school uses. They're in the region of about £40 per atomizer gun, and the liquid is about £6 to fill up the gun. It operates like this. It sends off a little mist, and again, we use it in our classes, our minibuses. very, very reasonable. The school went out and invested in 150 of them, and they do an absolutely amazing job. So I'll send the link to CTA. So if you're interested, you'll find out where to get them there. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dean. And Andy also mentioned earlier in the chat that you can get them at First Aid for Less, which is great. Thank you very much for that, Andy. And thanks very much for that link, John. So Jacqueline, you've also put in saying that you have a full screen of plastic sheeting behind the driver and secured it with tape. This has worked well and saves the volunteer drivers wearing a mask. So Jacqueline, would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, just when someone else mentioned the screen, it's worked really well. It was just some hard firm pliable just plastic sheeting we had, and we kind of joined it and taped it. So it's behind the driver, the full area. So again, it's, you know, nothing can get through that. And it's worked well. And it was only buttons for the plastic and the tape, you know, and it's a wee bit more security as well. So that's all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Has anyone got any questions about transporting students that they'd like to bring up while we have everyone here? So we have Jeremy.
Yeah, morning everybody. Not a question as such, but just as a general point for schools, if you are going to use your transport, make sure that it's on your COVID risk assessment. Our own risk assessment is something like 23 pages. We don't have our minibus on it because we're not currently using it. But obviously when you're making decisions about your cleaning regime, whether you need screens, whether you're mixing year groups, etc., you need to cover yourself to make sure that you've got all that information on your risk assessment.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Now, perfect. Would we have anyone else who'd like to ask a question?
Could I just mention something I forgot to say? And that is about you guys looking after you most importantly. I said that at the beginning, but what I didn't say, and it's something that I'd mentioned to my bus clients, my coach clients, when you get home at night and you've been with all of your pupils and etc. all day, please change your clothes. Please don't think that you can go and visit your elderly relatives in the same clothes that you've been in with schools. A lot of my COVID awareness has come from my eldest daughter, who's an anaesthetist at the local hospital. Her words, and you have to excuse me because she's not very subtle, her words are that young people and children are vectors of disease. And she's just lovely, you know. But the point being that you have been in this situation with a lot of potential COVID carriers all day. Please, when you go home, change and make sure that you are not continuing that chain into your household. And I should have said that earlier. I apologize for not saying it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rachel. So perfect. Just before we finish up, I'll just get the last screen up with some information. So great. Can everyone see that okay? Been shared. Fantastic. So lastly, before we finish up, thank you everyone very much for coming. It's been absolutely fantastic to see so many faces and connect people together, as we've seen happening already, which is amazing, and it's so important, particularly now when everyone's pulling apart, to have some platform where we can come together and support each other. So thank you very much for attending. All these slides will be shared with everyone today, with a lot of the information that we mentioned throughout the session, including the CTA guidance. So with the email that will go out today, we will have a very quick and short feedback survey, which I'd really appreciate if everyone filled it out, just to see where we can make improvements for the future of online sessions like this. It takes 1 minute to fill out. Secondly, if you are interested in becoming a CTA member, we do have the link to our joining here, which is available on the screens. It's very easy. It takes 2 minutes. If you have any questions about it, please do feel free to contact our advice line, and one of our advisors would be more than happy to chat to you about it. I will leave the link to the advice line email in the email that will go out to all of you. We do have a series of online events that are up and coming for members particularly. If you would like to look at the programme for our events, it is available on our website. We do often open these events to non-members as well, but it is because that there is such a long waiting list at the moment and there is so much in demand. Lastly, we do have a wealth of resources available on our website to support you to run your minibus safely. Some of these being templates and resources and tools for a risk assessment, how to access funding, and how to manage volunteers. So that is all for today. Thank you very much for everyone for coming. It has been great to see you all, and I will ensure to send you out the email today.